Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, the Celtics and Bucks are tied at 2 games apiece. The always important Game 5 is tonight in Boston, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So what we figured we were going to do today is just a quick recap of what happened in the last game and a little preview about tonight's game and what it means for both teams. So let's just throw it back to Monday, Sap. Where the Celtics ultimately were able to come through with a win to basically save their season. Otherwise, they would have been on 3-1, and that is never a proposition for winning a series. They win 116-108, but really it took just a Herculean effort in the fourth quarter to win that game. So, Sap, I'll throw it to you. What were your impressions of that Celtics-Bucks Game 4?
That will forever be known as the Al Horford game, right? Because
Sure.
he had a career high 30 points in his 132nd career playoff game. He sets his career playoff high with 30 points. He was sensational. I mean, 6 for 6 from the floor in the fourth quarter. The team was 16 of 19 from the floor in the fourth quarter, outscoring Milwaukee 43-25. I mean, it was just an incredible performance. Actually, 43-28. They were down 7 going into the fourth quarter. Came back and won by 8, near perfect quarter basketball for the Celtics. So Al Horford, Tatum heated up late. Marcus Smart had some big baskets. Jaylen Brown, total team effort there. And because you don't want to get down 3-1 against Milwaukee, because then you'd have to win 3 in a row. Something I think it's nearly impossible to do against a player like Giannis. But now it's 2-2, and as we've seen in the long history of the NBA, when a series is tied at 2-2. The winner of Game 5 goes on to win the series 82% of the time. So that's how big this is. The Celtics ended up with home court advantage by beating Memphis on the final day of the regular season. Gives them home court advantage. So they've got Game 5 at TD Garden and Game 7, if necessary, at TD Garden on Sunday. So they're in good shape right now. I think they've proven over these first 4 games that they are the better team than Milwaukee, although Giannis is the best player. We all agree on that. But I think top to bottom, the Celtics are better. They have more ways to beat you. Look, Al Horford had a huge game. Jaylen Brown had a huge game in Game 2. Tatum has had kind of an up and down series, but then Grant Williams was great in Game 2. And in Game 4, you had everybody kind of chipping in. So I think top to bottom, they're better than Milwaukee, which is relying on Giannis and Drew Holiday, who is scoring points, but Jet, he's 31 of 92 from the floor. It's like 32%. That's just not very good. And, he has struggled mightily. So I think the Celtics have the edge right now. But obviously, they've got to take care of business tonight, because you don't want to get down 3-2 going to Milwaukee, where, that crowd will be fired up, and Lord knows Giannis will be fired up like he usually is. So this is a big game, but a bigger game for the Celtics, because you want to hold home court serve in this situation.
Yeah, and you never want to face elimination on the other team's home court. Mm-hmm. That's always a recipe for disaster. I mean, everything was going, even though, like you said, they weren't playing great. Milwaukee, everything seemed to be going their way headed into the fourth quarter. The Celtics looked a little lackadaisical, especially to start the game. They looked kind of dazed, and Milwaukee, really punched them in the face in that first quarter. Celtics held to just 18 points in that first quarter. And Giannis was playing a great game, and he finished with 34, 18, 5, and he was shot about not quite 50% from the floor, but shot fine. It was headed certainly in Milwaukee's direction. And then you got a massive fourth quarter from Al Horford and Jason Tatum, and that was enough to propel the Celtics. I think that fourth quarter was perhaps their best quarter of the season. They were fantastic. They couldn't miss in that quarter. And that was enough to propel them to a win. We said when we previewed the game, was it Sunday or Monday, Sap, that whoever wins that game, we thought would win the series. And that doesn't mean it's a fait accompli. Certainly Milwaukee can still win this series, but it puts the Celtics in the driver's seat. Like you said, they have the home court advantage back, and they have momentum having won in Milwaukee. So it's up to the Celtics to now, take a page out of Bill Belichick's book, do your job and be able to, you've seen enough of Milwaukee now to know what they want to do, how they want to do it. They want to be really physical. They want to go to Giannis almost every time, which who can blame them? And I think that the Celtics probably have about as a good a sense of how to counter that as you can have. Again, Giannis can just go crazy any given night. So it's more, and I've said this all along, Sap, it's more about stopping the role players on Milwaukee. It's more about limiting Grayson Allen and Bobby Portis and, keeping Drew Holiday inefficient, like you said, and getting Brook Lopez in foul trouble if you can, and not letting him have a big game. You have to just accept that Giannis is going to play really well, and you have to continue to make things as hard for him as possible while also taking away those role players and not letting a Grayson Allen hit a bunch of threes or a Drew Holiday get lots of clean looks to the basket. And so in game 4, I think the Celtics did a good enough job at that. Certainly they could have done a little bit better because they did have to rally in the fourth quarter to win the game. But overall, I think they did a good enough job. And from an offensive perspective for the Celtics, you have to get Jason Tatum going earlier. He did end up with 30 points, but most of them came in the fourth quarter. And you can't rely on Al Horford being able to have massive games every night. You could make a case he's been the Celtics' best player this postseason. He's been that good, but you can't count on that. So you have to find ways to get Tatum going earlier. Hope your guys hit some more open shots. Peyton Pritchard's been dreadful. Grant Williams had one great game, but he hasn't been hitting his threes at the rate that you expect. So you hope you can get some of those other guys involved, take a little less pressure off of Al Horford, and you try to put this thing away as soon as you can.
The thing about Giannis in this series is he's putting up his numbers, which he's going to do, but he's only shooting 44% from the floor. He shoots 57% from the floor. So you've made him inefficient. He's had to work his ass off to get what he's gotten. The other players haven't really stepped up for Milwaukee. As far as Jason Tatum, I was impressed the other night. He still wasn't engaged offensively. I mean, he's not necessarily going to the basket all that much because, again, you get Giannis and Brook Lopez there. But at least he was helping out on the boards. In game 3, he had 1 rebound. In game 4, he had 13 rebounds. So that's a big contribution when it comes to that. What's happening with Giannis? And I think we're seeing Giannis has to face what LeBron James faced for most of his career. His first stay in Cleveland for 7 years, even his second stay in Cleveland for 4 years, and to some degree with the Lakers. How many players have you ever seen since you've been watching basketball, and I've watched it longer, has to do everything for their team, right? I mean, Giannis is the leading scorer, the leading rebounder, the leading assist man, the best defender. He's the leader of the team. He's everything. And I think he's getting a little worn out from that because that's a lot to lay on a player. We know LeBron always did that in Cleveland, to a lesser degree in Miami because he had help there with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh.
But he was always going to be the best at all those things.
He was the best at all those things. As great as Michael Jordan is, and look, I think Michael Jordan's the second greatest player ever, and that seems to set everybody off. I think LeBron's the greatest player ever. Michael Jordan was fortunate that Scottie Pippen was as good, if not a better defender than Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen was as good, if not a better passer than Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen was as good, if not a better rebounder than Michael Jordan. So he could clean up a lot of the mess for Michael Jordan. And oh, by the way, Horace Grant was a really good defender, rebounder, as was Dennis Rodman in the second three-peat. So Jordan didn't have to do everything like LeBron and Giannis. And I think it just shows you that when a player's in that situation, that it's going to wear them out at some point. Now, between game 2 and game 3, you had a long layoff in the series, and we saw what Giannis looked like on Saturday. Well, after that, it's every other day. And quite frankly, Giannis, who plays his ass off from minute 1, and I don't think he's quite capable of saying, you know what, I'm going to ease into this game in the first quarter. We see LeBron do that all the time, where in the first quarter, he's like, is he engaged? No, he's just kind of like feeling things out. First game of a series, it's almost, I used to compare it to what the Patriots did in Super Bowls. You realize in 9 Super Bowls with Brady and Belichick, they never scored a touchdown in 9 games, and they won 6 of them because it's almost
quarter,
like
you mean
in the first quarter. Yeah, the first quarter, and it's just a feeling out process. And again, that's dangerous in a Super Bowl because maybe you get down 28-3 in the third quarter. But LeBron oftentimes in the first game is just kind of feeling things out. Giannis from the opening tap is going 100 miles an hour. That's why we love him, right? I mean, he's engaged. from moment one. But I think you saw the other night in the fourth quarter that the guy's kind of gassed. And
he was gassed, and he's in as good a shape as anybody is in the league. I mean, that's not a conditioning issue with him.
No, but he also does get amped up to the point where he almost seems like he's having trouble breathing. Right? It's not. It's more of a mental thing where he is just so charged up for this game that he can't relax at times. And maybe this is his fatal flaw, which is not a bad fatal flaw because he cares so much, right? So, but I think I can't see him pacing himself. That's just not how he's wired. He's not going to go out there and say, I'm just going to stand here in the corner on offense and see what happens, and I'll drift back on defense and see what happens. That's not what he's going to do. But I think, again, the Milwaukee Bucks rely so heavily on him. I can't think of a player in the league who has more on his shoulders than Giannis. And similar to the way LeBron was in Cleveland, they literally have to carry the franchise because, again, you got Holiday 31 of 92, and I stand corrected. He's actually shooting 34% from the floor, which is a slight improvement from what I said earlier, but that's still pretty bad. So that's the thing about Giannis is that, I think the guy is quite gassed now. He can go out tonight and score 47 points, and it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I think that, obviously that's a good point, Sep, that, he's played so hard that, he's a human being, and, he looks like a superhero out there, but at some point he's going to get tired just as anybody would. And like I said, it's not a conditioning issue. I would, venture to say he's in as good of shape, if not the best shape of anybody in the league. So it's just, and the Celtics are smart to try to wear him out as much as possible and make him work, on both ends of the court. That's obviously a strategic thing that they're doing, and it paid off in the end of the fourth game. In the fourth quarter, the Celtics outscored, like you said, Milwaukee 43-28 in that fourth quarter. A lot of it was because Milwaukee was fatigued, and Celtics made them work. So, that is something that you can look at in this game. Like you said, Sep, just a one day off between games. Could there be some lingering fatigue from Giannis? Certainly possible. And if that's the case, the Celtics need to take advantage of that. Let me ask you this, Sap. Why has Al Horford been able to be so effective in this series?
I think that Milwaukee allows you to take threes, right? And especially your bigs. I mean, Giannis isn't going out there, and Brook Lopez will not go out there. And look, Horford's shooting 54% from three in the postseason, and that's on 5.5 attempts. They pack it in, Sap.
It's like the old Bruins when they had Claude Julien as their coach. They pack it in around the net, right? That's their defensive strategy.
Or the Italian soccer team, once they get a 1-goal lead, they just build the chain around the defensive area and dare you to try to beat it. So Horford's been able to go outside and get some threes, and he's again hitting 54% of his threes in the postseason. And it's not like he's taking 2 a game; he's taking 5.5 per game. His numbers are incredible in this postseason.
They're all wide open too.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 16 and 9 on 35 minutes per game. That's the other thing. Guy's 36 years old nearly, and he's averaging 35 minutes per game. He's doing so many great things. So there's some open threes in there. And I just think that, look, he also looks like a guy that's very hungry for this. He's played 132 postseason games in his career, and he's never made it to the finals. I mean, we talk about Chris Paul finally made it to the finals last year, and I'm not putting Al Horford in the same class as Chris Paul as a player, but I've often called him the poor man's Tim Duncan, right? And that's a compliment to him and a compliment to Tim Duncan. And, he's figured out ways to contribute. He was great in game 3. I mean, if you steal that game on Saturday, he and Jaylen Brown were both magnificent in that game, not so much Jason Tatum. So he's hitting his threes, which you're going to get open threes against this Milwaukee team. And, I think that's really what's happened. And that just kind of leads to more confidence and maybe opens up the court a little bit because he's also a very good passer. He does everything well on a basketball court, right? But you saw the other night when he had that dunk over Giannis, I've never seen him react like that. He is as calm and cool as anyone. Again, like Tim Duncan. Did Tim Duncan ever show emotion on the court? No.
Only with Joey Crawford. Yeah.
Right. Joey Crawford would throw him out. And even then, he wasn't even getting fired up. And Horford's the same way. It almost feels like Horford is looking and saying, I've been in the league 15 years. I've had a really nice career. He maybe smells it. It's like the Celtics in some annals are the favorite to win the championship. On ESPN, the ESPN BPI says they're the favorites. Nate Silver's been saying that for 3 months. I mean, I think if the Celtics win the championship, it's not going to surprise anyone. They're that good. And maybe he's just smelling it and is like, okay, if I can beat these Milwaukee Bucks, I move on to a team that I think we can beat. And I think that's also part of it. And he seems to be just playing at a level that, is somewhat surprising for a guy that age.
Yeah, I think they feel it too, in that, like, if you beat Milwaukee, if you defeat the best player in the world and the defending champs, you can beat anyone. I think
Sure.
that's true, especially because,
Yep.
like we said, we've been saying all along, Sap, it's wide open. There's no Golden State Warriors from 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And so I think you look at it, it goes, we are playing the champs right now. If we knock them off, that means we are the favorites. Period.
Hmm.
That's how they look at it. That's how you should look at it. If you can knock off the defending champions, then you suddenly are the favorite.
Sure.
I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. And so, yeah, I think there's a degree of him certainly being like, hey, I have an opportunity to do this right now, and I've been in the league for such a long time, and this might be my best chance. This might be the best team I've played on. I definitely think there's some of that too, and also, um, just like I said, he's getting so many wide open looks. Like, he's a
Hmm.
competent 3-point shooter. He's not this good of a 3-point shooter, but if you're gonna leave a multi-time All-Star wide open from three all game long, like, he's bound to hit 4 or 5 of them, and that's what he's been doing every game. So Milwaukee may have to change their strategy defensively, but if they do that, I almost feel like it also plays to the Celtics' advantage, because it does give Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown a little bit more driving lanes, which is what Tatum's been looking for virtually all series long, is finding ways to get to the basket easier, because they've made it really tough. So I don't know that there's a good solution for Milwaukee defensively, besides either keep doing what you're doing and hope the Celtics miss their threes, or defend the 3-point line a little bit more and give the Celtics more of a chance to drive to the basket. There's not an easy solution for them.
No, and also I think Mike Budenholzer has helped the Celtics out by taking away minutes from Bobby Portis and giving it to George Hill. I think that's been a colossal mistake on the part of Mike Budenholzer. Maybe I just have something against George Hill
You don't.
because in the
You also don't like
2018
Mike
finals,
Budenholzer.
well, I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's good. I think Eric Spoelstra is better. I think that I think Eric Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the league. I think Ty Lue's better. I think Ime Udoka's outcoached him so far in this series, just enough. Although I think Ime has the better team. So if somehow Milwaukee wins, maybe Budenholzer's not going to get the credit. It's going to be Giannis. I mean, if Milwaukee wins this series, they're going to need a huge effort from Giannis. But
Yeah.
I also have a thing against George Hill, who, if he just had hit both free throws at the end of game one in 2018, the Cavaliers would have been up 1-0 over Golden State. Maybe they lose that series in 5 instead of 4. I don't know. But, he misses the second free throw. And, of course, we know what J.R. Smith did, thought that, he was going to run out the clock at a tie game. So, yeah, I mean, I don't understand why Portis isn't playing more. I mean, he had a really good game one. I know there could be some defensive issues there, but, the guy can hit threes. He's an energy guy. He's a physical player. And to me, that would be Milwaukee taking even more advantage of their advantage, which is size and strength. They went on that big lineup of Portis, Giannis, and Lopez, and at times the Celtics had problems with that. But maybe Budenholzer looks and says, well, if we have 3 bigs out there, Horford's going to cause even more problems from 3.
Yeah, one interesting thing that I have not been able to figure out yet, Sap, and I've been racking my brain, so maybe you could figure this out, is the Celtics didn't play Grant Williams in the fourth quarter of the game. They, again, like I said, had maybe their best fourth quarter of the season. Grant Williams, for the most part, this playoffs, I think, has been really good, and he's done a good job on Giannis. So was it
at home?
just
At home, he's
at home?
played
Okay.
well at home, not on the road.
Was it just a coincidence that he was out for the whole fourth quarter and they played really well, or was it something about him not being on the court that helped the Celtics?
Well, I think
I can't figure it out.
It is tough to figure. I mean, Derek White actually played really well in those 2 games in Milwaukee. I mean, if he continues to play at that level, then, good for the Celtics. Maybe he's the reverse of Grant Williams. He plays better on the road than at home, because he was acquired at the trade deadline. I think he's been pretty much a disappointment since he's been here. But games 3 and 4, he was outstanding. So I think that they decided to go with a smaller lineup, go with Derek White, Marcus Smart. Jaylen Brown, had the foul trouble, but you get him back in there, and then you get Horford and Tatum. And Tatum gives you a lot of flexibility. If he's engaged rebounding, he's not a natural 4. And again, this positionless basketball, I get it, but he's not going to be a liability on the boards. I mean, the guy averaged 8 rebounds a game this year, and I think at some point in his career, he could average close to 10. I mean, he's got the physical ability to do that. So I think that they just went with the smaller lineup, and it started to work. So, and look, this is what I like so much about Ime Udoka. He's not like tied to a certain way of doing things, right? I mean, he seems to be able to change on the fly, which is what a good coach does.
Yeah, Tatum was getting to the basket in the fourth quarter,
Mhm.
and I think some of it was what you alluded to, the fatigue. But you would think like, okay, Grant Williams, if he's in there setting screens, like he's a good screen setter, he's a big
Mhm.
body, and that would free him up. But he wasn't in there, so again, I can't. I'm trying to be honest here. I can't really figure out why the fact that Grant Williams didn't play a minute in the fourth quarter resulted in the
Well,
Celtics having such a great quarter.
I
Or again,
wouldn't.
could it have just been coincidence?
It could be coincidence. I mean, I wouldn't really, get too immersed in this or scratch your head or bang your head against the wall when it comes
I
to
am,
Grant
Sap. I'm
Williams.
very,
Well,
very
I
frustrated. I
know,
can't figure it out.
but that's like saying, well, I guess I probably brought this up in The Godfather. Like The Godfather 3 didn't have a Robert Duvall, instead it had George Hamilton, and I think that's a big drop, right? So, he's still a role player, Grant Williams, and again, he's played much better at home than on the road, which role players tend to do, right? I mean, you see a player like Pat Connaughton, who I think actually has played pretty well in this series. I know for some
He
reason
has.
people like to dump on him, but
No, he's had a great series, I
he's
think,
had a
for him.
really good series. And let me also bring this up, and I know he's the white guy, right? But he's probably the second best athlete on the court every night. I mean, the guy was
He's
a
a great
major league
athlete.
baseball
Yeah.
pitcher. He's got a 40-inch vertical jump. I mean, it's just like some people just can't look and say, well, the guy's a great athlete. I mean, he was
That's why I'm a little surprised they only use him as a spot up shooter.
yeah, because he's pretty active out there. And like even he had a steal the other night and took it right to the rack. And they're like, I can't believe he got there. I'm like, no, the guy's an athlete. Like, can you stop that because he's the white
He's in the
guy?
dunk
He's not an
contest.
athlete. Right. I mean, it just blows my mind. It's like, okay, let's just keep perpetrating stereotypes for whatever. But he's done a good job, and he played well at the guard. I mean, in game 2, he put up some points late in garbage time, so that's not really that important. But yeah, Grayson Allen's been marginalized in the series because at least the Celtics have made him pay on the defensive end, which is good. Whether he's, when he's tried to cover Jaylen Brown, it's been a disaster. So you have to make those types of players like Grayson Allen pay on the defensive end. Maybe they'll play Portis more tonight than they have in the recent games. I think he's a guy that always seems to be in the middle of something. He's a guy who is an igniter, and I'm surprised he hasn't played as much the last few games, and instead they're giving the minutes to George Hill, who has this reputation as a Celtics killer, right? Because he had some good games when he was in Cleveland or in San Antonio, but I mean that was many years ago.
Yeah, and the Celtics, Ime Udoka said that he knows George Hill well because they played on San Antonio together, and he coached him in San Antonio, and that they hunted him defensively.
Yeah,
it worked.
Yeah,
and that's Milwaukee's an excellent defensive team. I think they might be the best defensive team in basketball. It's either you, them, or the Heat in my mind.
Right.
And but you can't have a full roster of plus defenders.
No.
And so when the Celtics see a minus or average defender come in, they're going to specifically go at them because you can't go at Giannis defensively. You can't go at Holiday defensively. You can't really go at Lopez defensively. Matthews has done, I think, a phenomenal job defensively in this series.
He has.
And so you got to look at, okay, Hill, we're going to go at him. Grayson Allen, we're going to go at him. Connaughton's actually fine defensively too. Like they have a lot of good defensive players on the Bucks. They do. But you got
like the Celtics.
pick your matchups when you can.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing the Celtics, you kind of look at Peyton Pritchard and say, okay, this is the guy we've got to hunt that situation. Tice is okay defensively. Just
God, he was terrible.
See him
holy crap, he was so bad.
Just abysmal. I mean, we don't need him taking threes. I mean,
he made us miss Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, exactly. Because he just kept jacking up threes, and maybe you use him to foul guys. I mean, that's about his only thing. But you can have Cornette come out there and foul Giannis 6 times in a given game.
He can shoot threes.
I guess, yeah, better than Tice. But so, yeah, you're right. If you've got any weakness on the defensive end, they're going to kind of find you there. But these are 2 really good defensive teams. And I agree with you. Those are probably the 3 best defensive teams in the league. And a lot of it's mentality, too. I mean, they're all kind of physical, gritty type teams, and it's set by the coach. Man,
this series has been one of the most physical series I can remember. I know the 80s and 90s are incredibly physical, but we're talking about, the new generation of basketball. But this has been a war. I mean, Giannis is killing guys out there. I mean,
he's like a running back. I mean, or like I mentioned it earlier.
Elbows and knees. He uses those very effectively. Yeah.
He's Rob Gronkowski out there. Like he's difficult to officiate because he's just bigger, stronger, more explosive than everybody. and he's a great player. It's not like he's just this big oof out there. He's just he's a stud. So yeah, he's difficult to deal with. And you got Marcus Smart's taking charges, and Grant Williams is hitting the deck. And there's a little bit of acting there by the Celtics, and now Milwaukee's getting involved with that. It kind of feels like a Italian soccer league Serie A match, where there's a lot of acting going on. But it's been a physical series, and the '90s was the most physical decade I ever saw. The '80s, I think a lot of people forget the '80s was a lot of high scoring. I don't think the defense was great in the '80s. There was some physicality there because the Pistons kind of brought that to the forefront. And we all see, Mikhail clotheslining Kurt Rambis, right, and Robert Parrish punching Bill Laimbeer, and Bill Laimbeer taking Bird down. There was that physicality, but on a play-to-play basis, it wasn't quite like the '90s where you had the Knicks and the Bulls playing each other, and then the Knicks and the Heat playing each other, and it really felt more like, the NFL than the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I do. I like the physical basketball, and I think that the series has been refereed not well. I'd say inconsistently. Sometimes they're letting it
on
go.
both sides.
On both ends.
On both sides. Yeah.
Oh no,
yeah.
I'm not saying one way or the other. And I'm saying inconsistently.
Terrible.
Sometimes they're letting the physicality go. Sometimes they're not at all. I thought the two technicals in last game were both ridiculous. The one on Giannis, the taunting one on Giannis. There should be no. I hate taunting in general in the NBA, the NFL. The professionals, let them do whatever the hell they want, taunting wise. Who cares? Who gives a damn? Let them taunt. They should not get a technical for that. Al Horford's technical, I thought, was the result of just momentum. Both of those were, I thought, silly. So, the officiating's been bad, but it's, it is kind of what you come to expect. But I just rather them just swallow it in general. Let them play, or don't let anything go. You got to pick a direction. You can't do it inconsistently, because then the players don't know what the hell to do. Yeah,
because one trip down the court, it's a foul. The next trip down, it's not a foul, and it's the same play. So, you get that. But yeah, I don't think the officiating's been good, and the incessant replays are just, they bog the sport down. Yeah, I mean, you got to go back and look if so-and-so elbowed this guy and if this other guy got hacked or whatever. So it does bog the product down, which is a great product because you can get an NBA game in less than 2.5 hours, which is sensational. But yeah, it's been a physical series, and because that's kind of what both teams are. They're good defensive teams. And, that's what's going to impose their will on the other team, especially now that we're at Game 5.
Right. So Game 5 again tonight at 7:00. Sap, do you expect to see a different strategy from either team? Do you expect to see more of the same? And who do you expect to win?
I think the Celtics are going to win tonight. I don't think they're going to win by the margin, that Miami won last night or that Phoenix won last night. You're talking 35 and 30
Those
point
are non-competitive games.
Not at all. I mean, they were done. It felt like, 5 minutes into those games. And I think what happens in this situation, Jess,
I told you Phoenix was going to be pissed off, by the way, right?
Oh,
I did tell you that they were going to be
absolutely pissed. They were very pissed off, and Miami was very pissed off too. And Embiid seemed to be a little disengaged last night. I don't know what was bothering him, other than
MVP.
The MVP and the fact that he's playing with a fractured eye socket and a ligament tear in his shooting thumb. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I think what happens in this situation too is if the Celtics get out to a big lead like they did in Game 2, Milwaukee knows they have a chance now Friday night in Game 6, and it's every other day. So, it's not the Tour de France. You're not going to start Game 6 with the lead that you win Game 5 with. So I think sometimes they'll just pull up the white flag, right? Surrender time when someone
I think
gets
it's more on the
18 or
Celtics
20 points.
than to seize that, knowing that Milwaukee's like, okay,
take advantage
we're going to go back home.
Yeah,
but I think the Celtics will play out even if Milwaukee goes up big. The Celtics, can't afford to wave the white flag because you can't have the elimination game on the road.
No, I think they're going to win tonight, and I think Tatum, I think, is a little banged up with the wrist and the knee, and again, you can't drive the basket to the basket easily against this Milwaukee team with Lopez and Giannis. So, but maybe he found himself in that fourth quarter because he had a spectacular fourth quarter himself. He had 12 points in the fourth quarter. That's outstanding. Hit some big three. So maybe he found himself a little bit. So expect him to maybe have a big night tonight, because I think at some point they're going to need that from him, because they're getting great performances from Horford and Grant Williams at home, and Jaylen Brown's been outstanding. But at some point, Tatum's going to have to be the guy who carries you over the top, and maybe that's tonight.
Yeah, I was still kind of waiting for that huge 4-quarter effort from Jason Tatum. and we got some of that in Brooklyn series. This obviously is just a completely different team than Brooklyn, as anybody with eyes can see. So yeah, I think the Celtics will win tonight. And we both said Boston in 7 the other day. So we expect Boston to win tonight. Milwaukee probably game 6 at home, and then game 7 it will be in Boston. So you'd think the Celtics have the advantage there, but those game 7s can go anybody's way. So, but massive for either team obviously to win tonight. But as you said at the very beginning, Sap, more so for the Celtics because you get obviously 2 cracks at it, and you don't have to go face elimination on the road.
Yep. Big game, bigger game for the Celtics, and I think they'll come through.
Yeah. So hopefully for my sanity, Sap, we see them play a great game tonight. Otherwise, I'm going to be upset for the next couple of days and very nervous. But hey, at least they took care of business in the prior game, and they're not facing elimination tonight, because then I would really be a mess. My hair would be falling out, all that stuff.
Don't let that happen.
Yeah. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out our social medias for all updates on the show, when it's coming out, what our predictions are, any good poll questions that Sap has to offer. Maybe he's got some cool questions to ask about, how much money people should pay LeBron James to be an analyst after his career is over, considering how much Tom Brady's getting paid. So you never know. And so that's at John Sapp 25 and at Jet Stryer. You can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sapp, and we'll be back later in the week with a new episode for you. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you later. See ya.